Setting up the Super Empire Builder Xtra. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to open the box and make sure that all the products listed on the box are actually packed in the box. First, we find some literature. We find the LT1 LocoNet tester and decoder tester. This is an invaluable diagnostic tool. Make sure you know where it is so you can get to it at any time. We also have the UP5 universal panel that helps you plug in your throttle around the railroad. We have our DT402 throttle. This is a tethered throttle. We have our DB150 command station booster. We have a LocoNet cable. And we have two manuals, the Super Empire Builder Xtra manual, and we have a mobile decoder manual. The mobile decoder manual is going to be used in the future as you modify your decoders in the locomotives to satisfy your expectations of their running characteristics. To begin our setup with the DB150, we're going to set our scale toggle switch to the scale that you're going to be running, either HO at the bottom, N scale in the middle, or O and G at the top. Many HO layouts, operators actually run their DB150 in the N scale setting. The next thing we're going to do is to make sure that the mode toggle switch is in the run position, the top position. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect the two wires from our power supply to our gray terminal plug, and notice that the outputs and inputs of the DB150 are clearly labeled. To insert the power supply, we put those in the leftmost positions, power in and power in. Be careful here and do not, under any circumstances, insert your power supply wires to any other positions on this terminal plug. To do so would be to destroy the DB150. So make sure that our power supply wires go to the leftmost power in and power in positions. To do that, the power supply is unplugged. We insert our wires into the gray terminal plug on the leftmost positions in power in and power in terminals. We then use a small screwdriver and we tighten the screws down onto our power supply wires. They are now firmly attached. The next thing you're going to do is plug in the power supply itself. You notice that when we plugged in the power supply, you heard one beep and the track status LED in the bottom center of the DB150 came on. The next thing we're going to do is connect our throttle, the DT402, to LocoNet port A on the DB150. You can use either LocoNet port A or B. They are interchangeable. You will notice that when we plug the throttle in, we get a display in the DT402. Let's look at a few of the keys on the DT402 and see exactly what they do. One of the first things you want to do is to make sure that we can control our track status, or power to the track. We do that by first pressing the power key in the lower left of the display. And you will notice that in the display itself you will see the words plus on, minus off. Now, that's important to be on the display to turn track status on or off with the DB150. And now we can either turn it off by pressing the N minus key, and you will notice that the orange light on the DB150 went out. If we now press the Y plus key, we notice that the orange light came on. In conjunction with this, there is a small black dot in the upper right part of the display. That small black dot should be on solid and not blinking. If you want it to blink, you simply press the Y plus key while the words plus on, minus off are in the display, and you can see it blinking. That puts the DB150 in a pause mode for certain diagnostics that we can perform with the system. But for all practical purposes, we always want this little small black dot to be on solid and never blinking. If it's blinking, simply press the Y plus key again, and note that the dot changes from blinking to solid. Now, to select a locomotive, we first decide which throttle we want the locomotive to be controlled by. Many people like to start out with the right-hand throttle, so simply turn the right-hand throttle a couple of clicks counterclockwise. You will notice that the right-hand SEL at the bottom of the display starts blinking. That is indicating to you now that this right throttle is active. To select a locomotive, simply press the loco key, and you will see the SEL has changed to a number that is flashing. You have just heard 3 beeps from the DB150 indicating that that particular address is purged from this throttle. That's good. Now, we're going to assume that our locomotive is also new, has a new decoder in it, and all new decoders come from the factory at address 3. So we're going to select address 3. We've pressed the loco key. We have the number flashing. Simply press the 3 key, and you will now see 03 in the display. Now, to actually select that, we're going to either press the enter key or the loco key, either one. You have the selection. But also notice that while that particular address is flashing, you see a stat, STAT 128, in the display. That tells you that that particular decoder and the system are going to be running this locomotive address at 128 speed steps, as opposed to 14 speed steps or 28 speed steps. So, to lock it in, we're going to press the enter key. The number becomes solid. You will now notice you have an SP00. That means the speed for that particular locomotive is now set at 0. To increase the speed on that locomotive, simply turn the throttle knob clockwise. And you will notice 2 things. The numbers are increasing, and you have a bar graph at the very top also increasing. Either one tells you what percentage of power that particular decoder is getting. Counterclockwise slows it down and stops it. All right, now the next thing you want to do is perhaps reverse the direction of the locomotive. You have 2 ways of doing that. You'll notice the small locomotive over on the right-hand side in this case, and you'll note an arrow, in this case pointing to the front of the locomotive. That tells you that the locomotive is going to be running forward. No matter which way it's pointed on the track, in DCC it will be running forward. To reverse it and make it run backwards, you can double click by pushing down twice on the throttle knob, and you notice that the small arrow now points to the rear of the locomotive. That means it's going to run backwards. You also have the option of using the direction key on the throttle. By pressing it one time, you can make the locomotive run backward or forward. You have the same options on your left throttle knob. Now, if you have another locomotive, you could simply put that on the left throttle right now and run two locomotives. You can do that by activating the left throttle knob, turning it slightly counterclockwise. You will see the number and display on the left-hand side now flashing, indicating that the left throttle is energized. To select a locomotive on it, you press the locomotive key. You now get a flashing number at the bottom of the left side of the display. You select the locomotive that you want to run. In this case, let's select address 0. We'll say that this is an analog locomotive without a decoder in it. You press the 0 key, and you can either press the Enter key or the Loco key. We now have two locomotives selected on this particular DT402. The right throttle is now running address 03. The left throttle is now running address 00. If you notice the small locomotives in the display, you will notice that both of them are running in the forward direction. Again, meaning that the locomotive is going to run in its forward position or direction, no matter which way it's pointed on the track. You tell it to go forward, it's going to go forward. You want to reverse it, again, you can use the direction key, or you can use the throttle knob by double clicking, changing the direction. Okay. To connect the track to the DB150, we're simply going to add two wires from the track, rail A and rail B as we call them, to the rail A and rail B outputs on our terminal plug, in this case on the right hand side. Before adding our wires, we're going to make sure that we turn track power off. And as you recall, we will press the power key to get the words on off in the display, and then simply press the N- key. You notice that the orange track status light went out. We now no longer have power coming out of rail A and rail B on the DB150, and it will be safe to connect our wires. We simply take our two wires from the track. For simplicity's sake, we're using just two red wires, but most people will use two different colored wires to differentiate the rail A, rail B connections. Red and white, red and black, black and white, whatever colors you choose. We insert our wires. We then tighten down our screw terminal to each wire. Make sure they're good and solid, and now we can turn our track power back on.
Zoom back out?
No. By pressing the power key and the Y+ key. Again, making sure the small black dot in the DT402's upper right of the display is on solid and not blinking. Now we can run our trains. In order to add a booster to our main system, whether it's a DB150, as in the Super Empire Builder Xtra set, the Zephyr Extra Sets DCS51, or the Super Chief Extra Sets DCS100 or DCS200, we can add a booster such as the DB150 or a DB200. Today we're using a DB150. You will notice that I already have the track connected. In this particular setup, we're going to use two different colors of roadbed indicating two separate power districts. We would have on the layout the power districts that are going to be powered by the command station and DB150 and the DB150 booster, separated by insulated rail joiners in both the Rail A and Rail B rails. Any layout can only have one command station, and all other boosters must be configured as boosters to disable any command station capabilities in them. Since a DB150 can be either a command station and booster or just a plain booster, we're going to make this particular DB150 configured as a booster only, so it will not interfere with the command station. To do that with the DB150, we're going to place a jumper wire between the config A terminal and the ground terminal. If you're using a DB200 booster, you do the same thing. You need a jumper wire, in the case of the DB200, between the sync terminal and the ground terminal. Now that this is configured as a booster, we would normally add its own power supply. Today we just won't do that, but it does need its own power supply. The next thing we need to do to add the booster to the layout and have it run in conjunction with the command station is to connect the two with a LocoNet cable. Now you will notice a good LocoNet cable is a flat 6-wire telephone cable, and if you hold the two ends side by side and look at the colored wires in each one, the white wire is going to be on the same side in each plug. In this case, the right side has the white wire on this terminal plug. This terminal plug has the white wire on the same side, or the right side. We simply plug one end of the LocoNet cable into a LocoNet port on the command station, plug the other end into a LocoNet port on the booster. Now, assuming these tracks are connected and have insulated rail joiners, we can turn our system on and we'll be ready to go. It's as simple as that. Now, one caveat, and that is if you determine that when you run a train from this power district, controlled and powered by the command station booster, into the second power district powered by the DB150 booster only, and you have a shorting or a hesitation, you may have the two out of phase, even though your two wires may be the same going to Rail A and Rail B. If that is the case, simply swap the two wires in your terminal plug in Rail A and Rail B, and everything will run correctly for you. A good way to test and make sure that your Rail A and Rail B phasing is correct is to take a simple light bulb, put one of the wires to this side of the gap on Rail A, the other on the other side of the gap on Rail A, and if they light up, then we have dissimilar phasing and you need to swap your Rail A and Rail B wires. That completes the connection of a booster to your command station. Again, it can be a DB150, it can be a DCS100, it can be a DCS51. It doesn't matter. They all connect the same way. Okay? Done.